Hello everybody, welcome to Boxing Science. In this video, we're going to be giving you the ultimate breakdown for the best boxing card of all time. This is the last crescendo, part of Riyadh season, where it's going to be headlined by the rematch between Beterbiev versus Bivol. The first time round was an unbelievable technical fight. I can't wait for the rematch. And the co-main event is going to be an IBF heavyweight world title showdown. Joseph Parker taking on the champion Daniel Dubois. And then the rest of the card is unbelievable. Just world-class fighters in 50-50 fights. We've got Israel Madrimov versus Virgil Ortiz, Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz for the WBC middleweight world title, an all-British showdown between Joshua Buatsi and Callum Smith up at light heavyweight, and then actually opening the card, which is unbelievable. This could be a main event in its own, Zhilei Zhang versus Ajit Kabayel. So it's the best card ever. It's only fair for us at Boxing Science to provide the ultimate breakdown, looking at the punch statistics and how each athlete is preparing going into these mega fights on February 22nd, part of the Riyadh season in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Before we get started, if you're new to the channel, I'd like to ask you a quick favor. Hit the like button if you like this kind of content. And if you could become a subscriber, that'll be massive help for us to grow the channel. We've just hit 100,000 subscribers. We're going to go on to our next milestone now. So if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. And let's get on with the ultimate breakdown of the last crescendo. So we're going to start this analysis by taking a look at the main event, the rematch between Beterbiev and Bivol. The first fight was unbelievable. Two really talented athletes, absolute pinnacle of the sport, fighting it out for the undisputed. It was incredibly close. I was in fact in the arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as I was supporting Fabio Wardley in his British heavyweight title showdown with Fraser Clark. I was stuck about for the main event, watched it live, and at the time, I thought Bivol just shaded it. Watching it back on the replay, I thought Beterbiev just got it, but it was a fight that was so close. Even though these have come from similar backgrounds, both Russian, come from that Soviet boxing style of fighting, they're very different fighters. Bivol used his footwork really well and worked in bursts, landing 2, 3, 4 punch combinations. In fact, 20% of his punches was thrown in 4 punch combinations. Fantastic show of speed, outlanding Beterbiev with high impact shots in 8 rounds over the 12. However, Beterbiev was the pressure fighter. Over the 12 rounds, Beterbiev showed more pressure over 9 of them rounds. You can see why everybody was conflicted, because you got Bivol landing the more eye-catching shots over 8 of the 12 rounds, whereas Beterbiev was applying that pressure for 9 of the 12 rounds. Let's take a look at what was successful for each fighter. Beterbiev threw over 1,000 punches in this fight. This is an incredible show of fitness and work rate. 60% of these punches were jabs, and 53% of these were shown in single shots. Instead of working in them combinations, he was looking for them big punches, especially setting up with the jab. A lot of the work was done to the body, especially early on. As we're getting towards the back end of the fight, that's when he really started letting his hands go, looking to exchange with Bivol. The only problem with each fighter in exchanging, they're going to leave themselves at risk. As soon as Beterbiev was looking to open with some combinations, Bivol had that superior speed. He had the footwork as well to move out of the way. Once he landed his 2, 3, even 4 punch combinations, he actually threw 20% of his punches in 4 punch combinations. He was L-stepping, he was shifting left and right, totally offsetting Beterbiev as well. And a key shot for Bivol in this fight was the jab. He landed a massive 40% of his jabs thrown in this fight. So this is a huge metric, especially when you're fighting an elite fighter such as Beterbiev. So this was a huge success for Bivol. What he'd probably need to do in this fight is to throw more punches, and obviously land more punches to make it more convincing to the judges to get the win. Beterbiev threw over 1,000 punches. Bivol threw only 583. I say only. This is quite high for the light heavyweight average, but it's nearly half the amount of what Beterbiev threw. But in the fight, you could see that Bivol was getting tired. It was a high output. He was under pressure for a lot of the fight, constantly having to move. So just to say for him to throw more, it'll be quite difficult for him in terms of keeping that fitness up for 12 rounds. So it's like, what does he need to throw more of? Well, the jab had incredible accuracy, and also it's not going to be as fatiguing as going into them combinations, and maybe saving them combinations, 2 or 3 punch combinations, rather than going to the 4, because this is going to be more fatiguing and also going to leave him in a more vulnerable position. When you're training with Beterbiev, that's not a place that you want to be. This is where he gets most of his fighters out of there, when they're throwing too many punches, leaning over that front foot, and then he catches his opponent and ends up dropping them and eventually stopping them as well. The main thing that Bivol will need to do is to use that jab, use it effectively, increase the output, but then only doing that in 2 or 3 punch combinations and still using that superior footwork to get out of the way of Beterbiev's attacks. And let's take a look at what Bivol has actually been doing in training camp. He's been doing a lot of work with his S&C coach, Taylor Ramsdale, and we've covered a lot of Bivol's S&C work, his fantastic work, and you can see a huge transfer into his boxing performance. And 2 key things that he's doing in this training camp is he's doing some high intensity work, working on the air bike, a lot of off feet conditioning. This is helping him work higher intensities. Working in them bursts is going to be really important in this fight, and being able to maintain that over the 12 rounds. This is a fantastic drill as well, where he's doing banded shadow box and is alternating where the resistance is coming from. And this is going to be really good because Bivol in the Beterbiev first fight was really shifting from side to side. There was no kind of pattern to his work, and this really helped offset Beterbiev's attacks. Moving left and right, moving back, not moving in straight lines. This drill here is fantastic because it's getting Bivol constantly moving from left to right. And also what's important is when he's throwing punches, it's keeping him in an upright position and not leaning over that front foot. Like I just mentioned, Beterbiev really catches his opponents when they're looking to trade with Beterbiev and leaning over that front foot. And this is where he counters and lands some devastating punches. So with this drill here, it's getting Bivol moving in different directions, but keeping that posture, keeping that shape, sitting into that stance and that guard position. At Boxing Science, we've used this drill quite a lot, really like in a drill setting rather than kind of just this variant setting. Each one of them works. In the drill setting, we're just looking at either working against the resistance to move forward, to be strong on the front foot, or actually working with the band and having to resist kind of moving forward. That resistance and moving forward, making sure you're breaking with that front foot and not leaning over that front foot when you're coming forward. But with Bivol, moving from side to side, predominantly going to have to be on the back foot. This is a fantastic drill for him to use. So let's have a look at Beterbiev and what he has to do in this fight differently. Well, essentially he won the fight, so he can do more of the same thing. You can't probably ask him to throw more punches. Potentially, he could look to working more combinations. Like I said, 53% of his punches were thrown as single punches. Working in combinations will be better. Looking to trade with Bivol when he's actually standing in the pocket. It's obviously easy for me to say I'm not getting punched in the face by Bivol. He was landing some crisp, fast punches, but it's almost like you've got to get in there and have to like kind of trade in there. So maybe coming off that last camp where he had some knee injuries, it might be a little bit stronger, a little bit fitter and sharper going into this next fight with Bivol. That knee injury, I think it played a bigger factor than what was actually shown on fight night. But a lot of it was like kind of said in the build-up, how this knee actually had an effect on his training, his preparation, and essentially what his performance would be. Now, if you actually have a look at some of Beterbiev's training posts before the first fight, he was not doing much strength conditioning. He was doing more boxing base. Obviously, we can only just base it off kind of what you see on social media, but a lot of his posts were boxing. And the only kind of thing that we saw that wasn't boxing was him doing some off-feet conditioning, going out on the bike. So you can see that he's doing a lot more strength conditioning work. And this exercise here, dumbbell snatch into an overhead press, dropping it down and almost like throwing it up and catching it. Unbelievable work. Like, this is unbelievable strength. Like, the amount of weight that's actually on the dumbbell, I can't really see, but it looks pretty big. Now, what is the benefits of this exercise? Is doing a dumbbell snatch, which is pretty good for hip extension strength, core strength, oblique, rotational power, and also that posterior shoulder strength as well. And then it's dropping back down into press, which is fantastic for improving the shoulder muscles. Obviously, it's important for creating that stiffness upon impact of a punch. But what's really good here is when he's actually dropping it down and catching it, he's actually working the decelerator. So a lot of upper body power work that boxers do, a lot concentric, a lot anterior dominant, rather than looking at reactive work that they can do posterior. And this is really important because this is working the brakes and this can actually help the snap of a punch and also can help work in combinations as well. So we do drop prone row, we do a kettlebell alternate drop. We also do the fast row and rotate, where we're just looking at a fighter to be able to relax the lat muscles, be able to decelerate fast, and then pull it back in. And this is essentially what Beterbiev is doing when he's pulling across with his dumbbell, working them decelerators, working that in a ballistic sense. And this is going to transfer into increasing the snap of the punch and transfer towards combination punching. The strength that Beterbiev has is insane, unbelievable. You can also see this with his upper body pressing, where he's like doing alternate press with 50 kilos. I'd be very happy if one of the athletes in boxing science was just to press 40 kilos bilaterally. So to do it with an alternate press at 50 kilos, unbelievable strength. You can see that he's doing a lot more strength conditioning work going into this fight. So this might show that Beterbiev might be looking to use his strength a bit more. It could come in fitter and sharper and in better condition than the first fight, which is a pretty scary thought. So I can see Beterbiev performing even better, but there's a lot of adjustments that Bivol could make. Like this, one of them fights that in the first fight couldn't really call. I watched it live. I couldn't really call which way we were going to go, shading it to Bivol, then I've watched it back and then shading it to Beterbiev. Now we're going into the rematch and there's different questions, but one thing is for certain, that it's going to be an unbelievable fight again.